Hello and good morning. My name is Elena and today we should be playing Banished Colonial Charter mod. Colonial Charter adds quite a few new buildings and resources to the game, and honestly I quite enjoy it. I'll be going over some of the new buildings and such in game as we come across them, as honestly there's really just way too many. But yeah, I played some of this mod beforehand to kind of get used to the changes, and so I kind of know where I'm going with it for the very beginning, but some of the higher tier and tier buildings I didn't really get into, so that'll be a bit of a new experience when we get there. The goal for this playthrough is I've never actually built across the entire map before, and I would really like to actually do that for a change. And honestly, Banished doesn't have any kind of win condition, so, you know, setting some kind of endpoint would be a good thing. So, as for the settings, the town name is Troi, who is actually my horse that I have, and I found it was kind of fitting. And terrain type being valleys, I prefer a bit more of the open space so you can actually build kind of a large town in the offshoot towns that I tend to build, which you'll see later. And terrain size being medium. Large is just really too big, I think, for kind of a let's play where the goal is to build across the map, simply because it'd probably be 100 hours of gameplay, give or take. Climate and disasters. I'm going with medium and off, just because I honestly don't find disasters any fun, and the dangers of running out of food, tools, and clothing are quite frankly more dangerous. And starting conditions on hard for simply I like to have my own building placement, and the other settings do start with, you know, like houses for easy and the storage barn for medium, and I just want to be able to place my own stuff how I want. But let us begin. And I must honestly say I love the background screens for this mod. They just look really cool, especially with the colonial ship in the background and whaling and stuff, although I feel bad for the whales. And so we will pause it, turn everything on. I have my own kind of little placement for where I like them. Okay. And this map I see is kind of interesting, considering it looks like the river here. Looks like the river isn't connected to either lake, and honestly I've never seen a lake shaped like this. They're usually around little island. Huh. But anyway, let us begin. Pretty much my kind of basic setup that I like to do, and just to kind of go over some of the buildings. Standard Banished only has a wooden house, stone house, and I think that's it, and plus a boarding house. But it's only those three. The mod adds in tiny shacks, which seem nice on paper because they're really tiny and don't use a lot of resources, but only for 3 people, so they don't really help with expanding your population base. So I always tend to build wooden houses because they give up to 4, sometimes 5. Log cabins require rope, so you really can't use them at the very beginning. I've actually not built any of them yet. And that actually looks really cool. I wasn't built on this game. Stone houses, too expensive for beginning, but better obviously if they upgrade from wooden. Same as in vanilla. Country houses are kind of what I tend to start building late game, because that resource there is glass, and it's kind of easy to make, and apparently they're better than stone houses. Honestly, there's no real stats that I found, either in-game or out of the game, that says, hey, these like save this much heat or use this much less firewood. Town abodes are kind of like tiny shacks, I think, but again, I've never actually built any, so might have to try that too. And large residences are really, really cool. They kind of look like, I don't know, manor houses, which actually they do upgrade into manor houses. They use both brick, stone, and glass, and are somewhat easy to build for, you know, brick and glass, but if you look at the size of them, they're like double the size of a normal house. So I only kind of tend to build them in what I sort of designate as rich areas, and boarding houses are pretty much the same. So, you know, they still look pretty cool. I don't know if there's actually any upgrades to them. Roads have brick roads, which I believe are faster than stone roads, and obviously use brick. And this has some tiling. I've never actually used it, and there's two types of bridges, wooden bridge and stone bridge. I'm not sure if stone bridges are actually in vanilla or not, but they're here, and there's also tunnels. I wonder if we can build tunnels across it. That'd be cool. Storage. We got the regular storage barn, then we have the regular stockpile, then there's also specialized stockpiles giving wood, firewood, stone, iron, and coal. I don't really use those, but it's there for if we do. And standard market, standard trading post. Bank barns actually require a hill to go into. That resource looks like, shoot, can't remember what it's called, but it's something a bit much later game, and I probably won't use those too much. Dry storage is kind of cool. They only store, obviously, dry stuff like that, and grain silos for grains, for fruits and vegetables, for root cellar, and a meat locker. This stuff's all pretty much the same, except for an abbey and a back alley. I haven't really built those, so we can look into that. Food got a massive expansion, plus a couple of watermill and windmill to kind of process things. Resources got a massive expansion, and alcohol. And this is one thing that I found very interesting. But a quayside house, where you just place along the river's edge. And they're decently sized houses, just requiring glass, brick, and stone, and really kind of nice. But I believe we should actually start doing something. And so I'll just get some of this kind of going. And just harvest some of the resources around. Kind of looking in the main kind of production area where you have the wood cutting and a little bit of resource production will be right here. And I'm thinking up over here we'll go with a forest lodge. Yeah, forest lodge. And one thing you always want with Forester's Lodge is a gatherer site. And later I'll build actually a couple of actual houses up there so that people don't have to walk so far, and that is all empty. And have those houses off center from each other. It's very weird. Okay. I'll actually pause two of those. And I want a storage barn over here. The road kind of going through center of town. And I know technically it's a bit early to build roads, but I like to leave them down beforehand, just to kind of get a bit of a just kind of get a bit of stuff laid out. And place stockpile there. And unpause it. Now I'm just gonna run it on ×5. I feel it's quick enough that you can kind of catch issues before they become a big issue and kill the colony. Like food, for example. And pause that. So, the resources will kind of focus on getting people housed, get the woodcutter up for firewood, which is really, really important. So that's kind of the border of where I want to actually have the town be. So, what I want is a blacksmith. And we'll pause that. Where the colors go? And a tailor shop. I'll place those down so that they aren't ready for later. So, we'll kind of get people swarming and building and doing all that good stuff. And for now, the storage cart that you start with is okay. It isn't great, but until the storage barn is ready, there's no reason to do anything with it. No, what are the builders doing? And it looks like they're working on the gatherers hut, which is okay. I always like to put roads in between. Kind of build roads there. You can build roads on diagonal lines by holding down shift. And honestly, it's always good to kind of do that if you know you're not going to build anything in between. I like to have towns laid out with nice straight lines so you can line up buildings easily to them. And people don't follow it. They will if it's like this, they'll follow the roads because they have no other choice. But in between here and there, they're going to follow the direct path more. And so building a straight road is not going to help you. And now if these people would work harder, get resources delivered, that would be great. Another thing I sometimes do, especially if there's a large distance in between the storage barn and the gatherer's hut, is to put a storage barn out with Forester's Lodge and gatherer's hut so they don't have to walk. It's useful sometimes. And actually an interesting thing I learned today is the hunters doesn't actually have to be in forest. So I might actually change what I usually do and put the hunters near actually the town. Hunting lodges, I think you can call it. Okay, and a nice thing that you can do is increase priority. And as you get people to stop focusing on resources, because we got quite a few, and focus on bringing stuff in. So the builders can actually start doing something useful, and we can start working on that. Because as you can see, they like to eat. And so getting early food production. Being Gatherer's Hut is probably one of the best food buildings in the entire game. Because they produce, depending on where the hut placement is and how much actual terrain they have, they can produce up to 4,000 food each for 4 workers. So it's about 1,000 food per worker, and no other building can actually do. They're all pretty well capped at usually around 1,000 to 1,500 for some fishermen sometimes. that I've seen. But otherwise, these are pretty much top buildings. The only difference is they have to have this entire area pretty much covered by forest, and that's a lot of used space, you could say, but per person they're really efficient. So, because inside of this you could probably have a rough guess of like 12 farms and produce 1,200 food, but that's 30 people. So, it's just a different way of playing depending on what you want to do. Now, the one thing I did discover is that bridges were kind of bugged, so when I deleted the wooden bridges to replace them with stone bridges, they didn't really work very well. So that's why I'm just going to place stone bridge there with the intent to eventually come over here, which kind of honestly looks kind of bad. Not a place I want to go, so I'll focus more on this way and kind of up here. But it's future planning. I suppose I should actually unpause these if I want them to work out. And yeah, for now, we've got a whole ton of resources, as well as 3 more laborers. This is good. So after we get this house up and this house, then all the starting people will at least be housed. To be quite honest, I'm not entirely sure if the people who just became laborers. Alright, then this is my question. And final family will be housed. We'll get the woodcutter up, because firewood is kind of important. And as you can see, food's become an issue, so pump those up. And yeah, early game food is really important. One thing I found with fishing docks is you want to kind of have the circle be as close as it can be in the water. It's much more efficient that way. This one. Okay, don't need to worry about that. Actually work on that. Now the people will have food, they will have actual firewood to be warm, they have food variety from having these 4 different types of food, so they'll at least be healthier. And we kind of progress to giving them fish, which is also another decent early game resource. We've got actual houses to expand. But that can be a little bit later. And we've got enough wood, enough stone for this to be a thing. Send our storage barn up. And as you can see, the people tend to be still chopping stuff down. Put 1 fish in there. I always like to keep as many laborers as possible, because I find, honestly, work doesn't get done if the laborers aren't there to actually move stuff. They tend to just leave things idle, and things get laying around, and actually stockpile's kind of full. But assigning priorities to things really helps focus their attention and gets things actually done. Because it's pretty much all the laborers bringing the resources. The builders do bring a little bit, but it's more laborers who focus on it, I found. But if you have like 40 or 50 buildings that need to be built, having a bunch of builders instead of 2, which I usually keep, really kind of helps. Yeah, as you can see, our tools are pretty much gone, our hide coats are pretty much gone, and hence why I really build a blacksmith. And you kind of get away without coats for a bit, but tools really slows everything down. And so what we kind of want to do is see if we can find iron and tell them to harvest it, just in case they're not. That's really the extension of how far I want to let them go for now. It's pretty much this far, just because it's waste of travel time, waste of energy, and all of that stuff. And focus on getting this blacksmith up so that we can kind of get ourselves, yeah, it's kind of cool. Kind of get ourselves some tools. And the next thing we want to do is get rid of that. So they'll start using the actual storage barn. Apparently. But yeah, kind of carved away a good portion of the forest, and that's the whole purpose of the Forester's Lodge, is to rebuild it for the Gatherer's Hut. And it's actually doing not too bad. A decent early game for, that's what, 1600, close to probably 1400 food? And where this has only produced 90. Although this is 4 times as much, so. Just waiting on some iron. Actually, what I want to do is increase priority of that, because as you notice, the 3 tools that were in it are not listed anymore. They have to be transferred over to the storage barn in order to actually get them. So if somebody would actually run out of tools, that would slow down the work process, and slow work is not good. And as you can see, they kind of used the path, but they cut straight across if it suits their needs. And that's kind of why you make the diagonal ones, because it sort of fits their pathing a bit more. But I kind of screwed up here a little bit, although I think it went around something, which is sort of annoying. I wish it would just go through and just not be placed until I chop it down, like they do with other buildings, but what are you gonna do? And I'm waiting on one more item. Here it comes. Alright, we can get builders up, and then we can build our tools. And we'll focus on the Forester's Lodge, and then maybe get some housing. And after that, then we'll work on the tool. As I said, it's not that important, but it is something that you do require at some point. Yeah. And I do want to kind of get things to expand. It's something you have to really carefully manage, is how much you expand and how many children are born, because honestly, children are completely useless until they're 10 years old, so there's literally a drain on the economy and a drain on the food until they actually become a laborer and they become a useful person. Not saying that children are useless in real life, just in this game, but One thing you can do with this blacksmith now is upgrade to a large smithy. You only have crude iron tools and then iron tools themselves to produce from a blacksmith. The large smithy will allow you to make steel tools as well as the thing that I'm completely forgetting. But it's for the estates. It's the only thing I've actually found that's or that requires them. And yay, the people are being efficient. So we'll give them 2 more houses, and that way this person, hauling? We'll assume it's hauling. And then Jilly potentially move out, as well as these 2. And yeah, we've got quite a few people who can move out. But I'm only going to do 2 for now, just to kind of keep our food situation in check. And we'll throw one of these. And another thing is, we pretty much don't want to limit on logs. Especially when you clear cut vast amounts of forest, you sometimes will stop producing from the forester's lodge, and I would like to chop down trees, because in this situation here, this woodcutter is pretty much going to be you need to produce more. Is going to be producing from the logs cut from here, so they're going to travel to the storage stockpile, and this woodcutter is going to cut from there. But say the center of town is considered over here, and this is where we're chopping down all the trees, they're going to have to walk all that way. And that's just really kind of ridiculous. Okay. And we'll get ourselves a tailor, kind of emptying the stockpile so we can put firewood there. And yay, more people will be coming back. But they're not too bad for production. Food is positive, which is good. Health has come down. For a specific reason, because they apparently like herbs. And this is the early form of doctor. I'm not entirely sure what low health will do, to be completely honest, but I would rather not find out. So, but this is kind of what I like to avoid, if I can, is there's only 3 children and 16 adults, and this kind of, what will happen is you'll have periods where you're building, you know, a whole bunch of houses, you'll have a population boom, and then everybody kind of dies at the same time. And so you could potentially run into having no laborers, or not enough people to work because everybody's children, or later in the game students, which adds another roughly 10 years. Although I've seen students who are 25 and laborers who are 18 who were educated, so I think it's kind of random. But yeah, it's just something I try to avoid having population booms, but you'll see where I probably won't manage to avoid that. Because especially later, I like to build vast, you know, areas. Like, I'll take an entire area and just build this, especially when I don't have the resources to do it. Yeah, it's just something that's fun to do. But another thing that you want to also do is clear away the non-forested tiles. Like, the forester's lodge will actually do it. See how it produced 2 stone? It's basically the forester going out, mining the stone, and planting a tree. And that's something that you kind of want to do a little bit more efficiently than they will, just by telling the laborers to actually do it as well. And we kind of need some. This person's not actually producing anything because I kind of forgot to build a hunting cabin. And yeah. So until that's done, he has no leather to actually produce. And Yeah, 3 people are born. Probably there, there, and there. Hi, Lauren. Cool. Alright. And kind of looking at people, we have 2 more people there, another person there, another person there. So we could support 2 more families, which I might do that. Now the thing is, these 2 houses, when this fishing dock is producing at full speed, will be fishermen. These wooden houses will probably carry a woodcutter, blacksmith, wheeler, but these ones are going to be, the people are going to be walking up here. So again, something that I tend to do is just build, you know, like 4-6 houses up here where the gatherers and the foresters are, so they don't have to walk to their job very far. And it saves a lot of time, makes it more efficient. So it's always useful. But I think I'm gonna call it here and make this episode 1. So hopefully see you all later and fly safe.